You didn't misunderstand her. You reacted exactly the way you were trained to react. And that's the problem. Men who are perceptive, the ones who notice patterns instead of chasing moments, eventually realize something uncomfortable. What they thought were invitations were often evaluations, not flirtation, not attraction, measurement. And if this feels personal, it's because it is. Because somewhere in your memory, there's a moment you can't quite explain. A look that felt charged, a gesture that seemed promising, a shift in energy that made you lean in just slightly, and then it vanished. She didn't reject you. She didn't confront you. She simply cooled. Most men never revisit those moments. They write them off as bad timing, mixed signals, chemistry that just wasn't there. But men who stay silent long enough to observe instead of react start asking a different question. What if she wasn't expressing desire but testing stability? That question changes everything, because once you see it, you can't unsee it, and suddenly what looked like seduction reveals something far more precise. Let's begin where most men lose control without realizing it. The lip bite. It seems harmless. She's listening, or pretending to. Her eyes drift away for a second, and then she presses her lips together, biting the lower one slowly. Your body responds before your mind catches up. That's not weakness, that's biology. But here's what men who operate from quiet power understand. The lip bite isn't an invitation, it's interference. Women who are socially and emotionally calibrated know exactly what that gesture does to male attention. They know where your eyes go. They know what tightens in your chest. They know the micro shift it creates in your posture. And while you're processing the sensation, she's observing the reaction, not if you noticed, but how much it moved you. This is where most men lose frame. Their voice changes just a shade softer. They lean forward just a fraction. They accelerate, flirting harder, proving interest, trying to capitalize. And in that moment, something subtle breaks because the question she's asking isn't sexual, it's structural. Is this man governed by impulse or anchored in himself? Men who chase the moment answer that question for her. Men who hold still leave it unanswered. And that uncertainty is what creates tension. Here's the part most people get wrong. She might actually be attracted to you, but attraction alone is never the deciding factor. What she's measuring is whether your internal center shifts when external stimulation appears. If a gesture that's small can pull you off axis, what happens later when the stakes are higher? So the men who pass this test don't perform restraint. They embody it. They notice the gesture, they register it, and nothing changes. Same pace, same tone, same grounded presence. And then not immediately, not reactively, a slow, almost amused smile. Not because you're trying to signal dominance, but because you're not threatened by suggestion. That smile does something dangerous. It introduces doubt. Did he see it? Why didn't it work? What is he anchored to? That isn't me. That's where power quietly shifts. Because attraction doesn't deepen when you chase it. It deepens when you demonstrate you don't need to. And this is only the first test. The next one feels even more innocent and exposes far more about a man than he realizes. Stay with me, because what comes next is where most men reveal their hunger without ever opening their mouths. Men who notice patterns instead of reacting always remember the second moment. Not because it was dramatic, but because it felt confusing. It didn't look like flirting. It didn't sound like intention. And yet, something shifted. The accidental touch. You're close enough to hear each other without leaning in. Conversation is light, controlled, safe. Then contact. Her fingers graze your forearm. Her hand brushes your thigh, a brief touch at the wrist as she laughs. Gone almost as fast as it arrived. Most men decide what it means immediately. She's into me. And that decision is where they fail, because that touch wasn't careless and it wasn't accidental. It was a probe. Women who understand social dynamics don't use touch to escalate first. They use it to measure not your confidence, your containment, because anyone can lean in when contact appears. Anyone can mirror touch, chase warmth, amplify the moment. But men who are internally anchored do something else entirely, they let it land, and this is where the difference becomes obvious. The average man reacts before the sensation fades, his body shifts toward hers, his hand moves reflexively, his voice lowers as if intimacy has already been granted. 3 seconds, that's all it takes. And in those 3 seconds, she learns something critical. This man follows energy, he doesn't hold it. The accidental touch is not about permission, it's about composure under pressure because physical closeness creates a subtle urgency. And urgency exposes need faster than words ever could. Men who chase the contact think they're being responsive. What they're actually revealing is dependence. Men who stay still communicate something rarer, security. They don't withdraw, they don't exaggerate, they don't return the gesture immediately to prove anything. They continue exactly as they were. Same pace, same presence, same calm authority in their body. And that stillness does something unexpected. It creates asymmetry. Now, she's the one leaning into the moment emotionally because the tension didn't collapse when she expected it to. Here's the uncomfortable truth most men don't hear. The moment you chase contact, it loses value. Because desire doesn't grow through grasping, it grows through containment. Women are biologically attuned to men who can absorb stimulation without losing structure, not dominance, not aggression, stability. The accidental touch is a simulation of pressure. And pressure reveals leadership faster than attraction ever will. So the men who pass this test don't play it cool. They don't play at all. They let the touch exist and end without letting it reorganize their nervous system. And when she feels that, something changes because now she's not testing whether you want her. She's wondering why you don't need her reaction to stay centered. And that question pulls harder than any compliment ever could. But this is still surface level. The next test bypasses touch entirely and goes straight for instinct. Most men fail it without even realizing they were being evaluated. Men who are observant eventually notice something unsettling. Sometimes she doesn't touch you. She doesn't speak to you. She doesn't even acknowledge you directly, and yet she moves for you. The hip sway. She passes by slowly, too slowly to be practical. Her hips lead the movement. Not exaggerated, just intentional enough to be felt. There's no smile, no signal, just motion, placed deliberately within your field of vision, and instinct wakes up. Your eyes follow before permission is granted. Your attention locks in before you decide. That's the test, because the hip sway doesn't ask if you're attracted. It checks whether your focus belongs to you. Men who react don't even realize they've surrendered control. Their posture shifts. Their gaze lingers half a second too long. Their awareness collapses into her movement. And without a word exchanged, the dynamic is set. She leads, you follow. Here's the part that reframes everything. Women are not turned on by attention. They are turned on by tension. Attention is cheap. Tension requires discipline. When she sways past you like that, she isn't trying to pull your eyes. She's checking whether they're already hers. And men who track the movement like prey answer that question instantly, yes. But the men who hold quiet power respond differently. They see her, they register the movement, and then nothing. No prolonged stare, no visible hunger, no shift in center. If eyes meet, it's brief, direct, unapologetic, 1 second. Then they disengage calmly, not nervously, not performatively. That moment creates something dangerous because now she's seen but not rewarded, and that tension lingers. She wonders whether you noticed why you didn't pursue. What internal structure allowed you to remain unchanged? Men who control their gaze control the frame. And frame is everything, especially when she performs the test while standing right in front of you, because this is where it becomes revealing. If she moves like that mid-con conversation and your voice falters, if your eyes drift and don't return, if your body leans in as if seeking permission, she doesn't feel desired. She feels in charge. And desire dies the moment leadership disappears. But when you stay centered, eyes steady, posture grounded, expression calm, you introduce friction. Not resistance, not rejection, friction. The kind that makes her step back into your orbit to see if the pull is still there, because men who don't chase visual stimulation communicate something rare. They don't belong to the room belongs to them. And now she's no longer testing attraction, she's testing something deeper, emotional steadiness. And the next test is the most intimate of all because it strips away movement, touch, and distraction entirely, just presence. There's a moment most men remember without realizing why it stayed with them. No touch, no movement, no performance, just silence. The lingering eye contact, your mid-con. Conversation energy is relaxed, familiar. Then she stops blinking. Her eyes settle into yours, not playful, not polite, present. An extra second passes, then another, and suddenly the room disappears. This isn't flirtation. This isn't romance. This is exposure. Because when a woman holds eye contact like that, she's not looking at you. She's looking through you. Women use eye contact the way surgeons use light to reveal instability. She's not searching for confidence. She's searching for self-agreement. Does this man collapse when seen? Does he reach for validation? Does he try to perform his way out of stillness? Most men do. They laugh too quickly, they talk too fast, they smirk too early, they widen their eyes to look confident or avert them to escape pressure. All of it is movement, and movement in this moment is surrender. Men who haven't anchored themselves internally experience lingering eye contact as threat, because being seen without distraction forces one question to the surface. Who am I when I'm not performing? The men who fail this test aren't weak. They're unfamiliar with stillness. But men who operate from quiet power do something different. They don't harden. They don't stare aggressively. They don't freeze. They remain eyes relaxed, jaw loose, breath steady. They let her see exactly what she came to inspect. Not bravado, not emptiness, presence, and something critical happens in her nervous system. Because a man who can hold eye contact without changing, without seeking approval or dominance, is a man who won't unravel later. He won't flinch during emotional tension. He won't overcorrect when conflict appears. He won't disappear when intimacy deepens. This is why this test matters. Her eyes are a mirror, not for your value, but for your regulation. And when you don't blink emotionally, she relaxes. That relaxation isn't comfort, it's trust. Here's the paradox most men miss. You don't pass this test by doing anything. You pass it by not needing to. When the moment naturally resolves, you allow it to. A subtle smile, not to charm, not to impress, but to acknowledge. Then you return to what you were doing. And that restraint imprints. But there's one final test, the most decisive one, because it doesn't challenge your attention or your discipline or even your emotional steadiness, because the men who don't cling to intensity are the men intensity follows. It challenges your command of space, and almost no one is taught how to hold it. This is the moment most men mislabel as a green light because it feels physical, immediate, unmistakable, and it isn't. The close distance shift. You're standing still by the bar near a wall in conversation. Then she steps closer, not enough to touch, not far enough to ignore. Her voice lowers, her body angles inward, her presence fills the space between you before her words do, and your nervous system reacts, heart rate shifts, thoughts accelerate, instinct whispers, act now. This is where nearly everything collapses because this move isn't seduction, it's calibration. Women are acutely sensitive to spatial energy, not socially, biologically. When she enters your space without asking, she isn't offering closeness. She's watching what you do with it. Do you freeze? Do you retreat? Do you rush forward and close the gap as if permission was granted? Most men do one of three things. They lean in fast, trying to lock the moment. They touch her prematurely, waist, arm, lower back, or they shrink, losing posture, losing presence. Each response answers the same question. This man cannot regulate tension, and regulation is what she's testing for, because closeness creates pressure, and pressure reveals leadership. Men who misread this moment confuse proximity with readiness. They assume intent where there is only curiosity. They collapse space instead of holding it, and the instant they do, she steps back, not because she's offended, but because the experiment is over. The man reacted. Men with quiet power do something that feels almost unnatural. They let the new distance exist. They don't move forward. They don't move away. They don't fill the silence. They allow the air to thicken. Their voice stays steady. Their body stays loose. Their eyes remain grounded, not hungry, not distant. And something subtle but profound happens. She feels held without being touched, because space is not just physical, it's psychological. The man who can maintain composure when distance closes is the man who can lead emotionally without force. He doesn't need to escalate. He doesn't need to retreat. He doesn't need to prove anything. And that restraint is rare. It signals something deeper than attraction, capacity, the ability to carry intensity without discharging it. And when she senses that, she stops testing because now she knows. But there's something even more important than passing individual tests. What matters is what these moments reveal together, because once you see the pattern, you don't just behave differently, you become different. That's where this ends, and that's where it finally begins. There's a reason none of these moments ever felt obvious while you were inside them, because they were never meant to be obvious. They were meant to feel natural while quietly extracting information. What you've just seen isn't 5 separate signals, it's one continuous evaluation. A woman doesn't ask, "Do I like him?" She asks something far more instinctive. Does this man move himself, or does the world move him? That's the thread running through everything. The lip bite tested impulse. The touch tested hunger. The hip sway tested focus. The eye contact tested emotional stability. The close distance tested spatial leadership. Not one of them asked you to act. Every one of them watched to see if you would. And this is the reframe most men never get. You weren't wrong. You weren't weak. You weren't clueless. You were operating without the full map because no one teaches men that attraction doesn't unfold through effort. It unfolds through containment. Men who react feel alive in the moment, then confused when the energy disappears. Men who observe feel calm in the moment, then notice something, follow them afterward. Interest, respect, curiosity, not because they demanded it, because they didn't leak it. This is what separates men who are constantly trying to read signals from men who become the signal. The second group doesn't chase chemistry. They create a stable emotional environment where chemistry can exist. They don't rush tension. They don't collapse silence. They don't grab at moments that were never meant to be seized. They let things reveal themselves, and once you understand this, something inside you settles. You stop performing, you stop guessing, you stop trying to prove you're unaffected because you actually are. That's the quiet shift, not dominance, not indifference, internal authority, the kind that doesn't announce itself, the kind that doesn't explain itself, the kind that changes how people respond to you without you doing anything new. And once you see the tests for what they are, they stop feeling like traps. They become mirrors. And the man who doesn't flinch when the mirror appears is the man women stop testing because they already know the answer.